record on my local computer. And are you guys ready to rumble?
Yeah.
Mr. Fenwick?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time you've all been waiting for. So grab a hold of your pocket protectors and join us for NerdWorld!
Welcome to Nerd World, episode 60, guys. Nerd World's about, 18 years old now since I originally started. We ran a bunch of episodes that we lost in the before times, but we're super excited. Hey, Colin. Hey, JS.
Hey.
We're super excited. I, on a whim, did a Google search for hydrologist podcast and up.
I thought you were looking for a urologist. That was my problem.
That too.
The questions I prepared today are kind of a little off base.
Yeah.
Unless maybe our guest knows the stuff about bladders and things like that.
No, those are those cute nurses that give the celebrities IVs when they get to their destination. So that's hydration something. Never mind.
So let me just share with you guys. I got an email back within an hour or so from Jay, and Jay, I'm Italian. I believe I know how to pronounce your name properly.
Let's find out.
I would say Famiglietti in my family. So Jay is an amazing, accomplished individual. I'll let him give you his bio, but we're just super honored. As J.S. Gilbert said, he's the most esteemed guest we've ever had on Nerd World over the 15-year period. And I think a very apropos guest at this time, especially here for Las Vegas. So I'm super eager to start this conversation. Jay, glad to have you on the show.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate you having me on.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm not a urologist.
You're not, darn it.
And I don't play one on TV either.
But you're originally from where?
I was born in Rhode Island. Went to college in Boston and made my way out west, studied hydrology for a graduate degree for my PhD, and was on the faculty at University of Texas, and then University of California, was a senior water scientist at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory at Caltech for many years, and then moved up here to Canada in 2018, where I'm in the University of Saskatchewan, executive director of the Global Institute for Water Security. It's been an interesting career. Love to share some stories with you today and hopefully raise some awareness about what's happening in the water world, especially with respect to water availability and climate change and how rapidly things are changing.
I was amazed to find that yesterday was the hottest day on record in the UK. Did I have that right?
I haven't seen that, but I believe it. I mean,
so climate change, people have to start finally, getting it through their head. This is one thing that I don't understand about climate change. You've got people who say things like, well, yeah, climate change is real, but it's not man-made. Now, as I understand it, humans have been managing their climate for about 5,000 years, right? Going back to the Nile Delta, and the Egyptians were managing water flows and so on. We're just doing it badly now, right? Or is it just a population thing, or is it an incompetence thing?
Well, it's really a little of everything. I mean, we have a huge population that needs to eat a lot of food, needs to use a lot of water, and hopefully raise some awareness, produce a lot of energy. So, it's all these things happening at once. Some places water is managed well. In some places it isn't managed at all. And there's everything in between. And so it's overall, I would say the overall state is it's a mess.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was brushing up on this.
Colin, did you lose your microphone or did you push it
Did
away
I?
from your face?
Did I lose my mic?
Yes. Check
Yes,
your
no?
audio. Check your audio devices. Make sure you're on the right microphone. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, so while Colin's figuring out what's going on over there, yeah, so I think the picture that's emerged over the last few decades, now that we can see things very clearly with satellites, is just following up on what he was saying. I mean, it's really, really hard to get the message out that water availability, patterns of water availability all over the world are changing really rapidly. And I think faster than people can really keep up with. People, and by people, I mean not only individuals, but faster than governments can keep up with as well.
I have a question about water that I've heard and read and wanted to ask somebody that knew the answer to this. Does water or H2O follow the laws of thermodynamics? Does it ever disappear from the planet?
No, it doesn't. Just in tiny, so there are small amounts on human timescales. No, on geologic timescales, there's small amounts that are destroyed by the sun, at the top of the atmosphere, and small amounts that are added through outgassing at volcanic vents and in the ocean and on land. But it's really, really a tiny amount. So for all practical purposes, it's not changing.
Jay, the polar ice caps are melting. That's a good thing, right? Because there'll be a lot more water for everybody.
Well, it would be a great thing if we could somehow contain it and manage it. It's a huge amount of water, and of course, one that's driving up sea level at a really rapid pace, at a pace of about, I don't know, I think it's about 3 millimeters per year right now.
So
it doesn't sound like much, but over decades, and then thinking about just how a little bit of sea level rise can really impact, when there's storms, can really impact storm surges, is actually quite a lot.
So water is not the issue. It seems like it's a distribution, and finding clean water seems to be the issue.
Well, yeah, the distribution is a problem, and I think we have places on the earth that have a lot of water and are gaining water, and it turns out to be that the places that are gaining water are the places that are already wet, and the places that are losing water are the places that are already dry. But one of the big problems for us as a global society is that we want to live in those dry places because they're sunny, and they're nice places to live. And those are the places where also because they're sunny, where we produce a lot of our food. And so we use a lot of our groundwater. So it's a bit problematic. But yeah, I mean, if we could somehow figure out how to distribute people all over the world, and had resources and capacity for people to live anywhere, and with infrastructure and healthcare and education, all that, we wouldn't have a problem. But that's just not the way it is.
Hey,
check here. Is my mic working at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Amazon rainforest is bigger than like the other two rainforests, the biggest combined, and we're losing space every day. They're clear cut, and they're doing. How much of a problem is that going to be in terms of the world's water and so forth?
Yeah, it's a pretty huge problem because it's an incredibly important ecosystem, and it's in a part of the world that's really, really critical to the global climate. So it helps, the Amazon, it's so wet, but it's almost like part of the ocean. And when you convert a big part of the ocean and change its surface temperature, you're changing in that part of the world, in the tropics, which are like the engine of climate. Then you're going to have global implications, and for climate change. One of the big things that we've been realizing for a long time, but getting the message out has been hard, is that the rainforest is also a source of water for rainfall. It's a huge forest. There's a tremendous amount of transpiration from the trees there, pumping as much water into the atmosphere as the ocean. And that's a really important source for precipitation. So when you chop down those trees, you are removing a source for precipitation. And it's not just precipitation in the Amazon, it's precipitation remotely. That's water vapor that would go up into the atmosphere and then get transported, get injected into the global circulation and would rain out somewhere else, like in the Middle East or like in the Himalayas. So these are huge problems.
I would believe you've got to be quite busy right now with all the challenges. Las Vegas, I was born and raised here. I'm close in age to you. And I remember in the 80s when the water was flowing over the dam, it's the lowest it's ever been since they built the Hoover Dam. And so
Yeah,
how we get water here.
Well, I visited, so I've been keeping an eye on that part of the world for a long time, of course, and just visited about a year ago, and I visited Lake Powell and Lake Mead, and was in Las Vegas, and was in Phoenix, and it just continues to get worse. It's incredibly challenged, colossal mega drought going on. The lakes are lower than ever. Emergency meetings for drought contingencies and cutbacks on the Colorado River. So huge problems ahead. I don't know what to say. I wish
I
there
thought you'd have the solution. I was excited to hear the solution today.
I have no solution. I'm sorry. If I had the solution, we wouldn't be in this mess.
If you had the solution, you'd have a Silicon Valley startup. Wait a minute.
I have a solution. How about a fusion power plant and several desalination plants right in LA and San Diego with pipes fed over to Las Vegas? How about that?
That sounds like science fiction. The fusion part for sure. And I wish that could work. The desal part. So, desal I think is really important, but it's right now it's only of limited use, meaning like good for cities, right? And good for coastal cities, but never enough water to grow food. And then once we start thinking about transporting that water over large distances, I think it becomes economically infeasible. So
is that an issue just of economics or of mechanical operations of desalination?
No, I think the mechanical operation. So here's the problems that we always hear about desalination. It's very expensive right now. It's energy intensive, and we need to do something with the brines. The brines, that's a huge, right? That's the salt that gets squeezed out. So and there's more problems as well that
Well, it's not nuclear waste.
No, it's not.
No.
But I mean, it's.
And if you can make the brines black salt, then Colin will buy all of that.
I know.
He loves
If
the
we can
black
make
salt.
it into artisanal salt.
There you go.
it'd be
Artisanal
fine.
sea salt. Perfect.
But I think the issue is that like one desal plant can probably supply the world's needs for artisanal salt in like a day.
I have a question that goes along with this. Now, there are a number of people and businesses, nonprofit organizations saying the future of the world's food supply is going to be resting in Africa. Africa is going to be the breadbasket for the world. I kind of don't see it in one way. I see it in another way, but what are your thoughts on that?
That's interesting. So no, I hadn't thought of it as the bread basket at all. There's just not enough. I mean, when I look at the continent as a whole, I mean, there's just not enough capacity. There's not enough capacity there. I mean, people don't realize, well, the average person doesn't realize that food is grown. It's a food system. It's not just, hey, let's just go grow, right, some more food in Egypt. It's a global, there's global distribution hubs that are located and are, entrenched. And so this is actually a huge issue. So like one of those is in California, in the Central Valley, right? And so suppose the southern part of the Central Valley actually runs out of water, or the southern High Plains aquifer, getting close to running out of water. Is it going to make more sense to actually move water to those places because the food systems are optimized in those locations? Or is it going to make more sense for agriculture to migrate away and to relocate? those are huge questions that are on the table. I'm not like an advocate of transporting water around, but I am kind of, realistic when I look at these global maps and I can see who's running out of water and who isn't, and where there is water and where there is not. And so these are questions that we have to deal with and actually get, rather than, opinions, actually need, scientific studies of.
Well,
these
and
processes.
there's another question about global warming and what's going on. A lot of people point to talking about Egypt and that area as once being the Fertile Crescent, and now obviously a lot of it is desert. So people are saying this is a natural phenomenon; it just happens. Blah 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 blah, and
no, there's nothing natural about what's happening over there. I mean, everything that I see, at least in my satellite data, and I've been looking at, and so these are NASA data, I've been looking at it for 20 years. Everything that we see about changing water availability is driven by humans, everything. I mean, there are some, sorry, I should be more specific. All of like the major trends that we're seeing are driven by humans. And so those are like the wet areas getting wetter, the dry areas getting drier, the strengthening of the extremes of flooding and drought, of course, the ice melting, and not just the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica, but the glaciers in the mountains like Patagonia and Alaska, and then all the groundwater, all the groundwater depletion and the changing extremes. So a lot of that is, if not all of it's human driven.
One more question, then I'll let my since I'm really a permanent special guest here and I don't even get billing, but so my theory is that all this stuff, COVID, monkeypox, the burning of England right now, all of these things is basically the Earth's way of trying to get rid of us. It's had enough. Get out of here. The worms, the snakes, the birds, the plants, we're fine with them. They don't screw with this wonderful blue marble that they've been given. And I just think this is the Earth's response. And until we wise up in a huge way, and I don't know how much time we have left to do that, we're just gonna, it'll start raining frogs, rivers will run red. We'll see 4 people on a horse, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, those guys, those four people came by my house last night, by the way. JS, I think you could be onto something there. I think
just so we're clear, when those 4 people come by your house, you say you're cops, but I know you're Jehovah's Witnesses. Get out.
So Jay, I heard tons of doom and gloom. Is there any bright spots on the horizon?
Well, Jay's got a job for life. That's a bright spot.
Yeah, there's no shortage. Even before we started talking about global change, back when I was got my master's degree at the University of Arizona, and there was a famous groundwater hydrologist there named Stan Davis, and he said, you people will never lack for a job and he was talking specifically about all the water pollution and groundwater contamination. But that is, that's sort of the glass half full part. So listen, I don't want to really sugarcoat anything that we're talking about. It's a really dire and urgent situation. And we, as a global society, are not responding, and within our countries, we're not responding at the pace and the scale that we need to respond. Are there any bright spots? Sure. I mean, there's lots of people working on solutions. By the way, that's why I'm using air quotes for solutions, because we're not solving the global water crisis, and we are not solving global warming, right? We're adapting and we're trying to minimize it. That's my take on it.
Makes sense.
But there's lots of stuff going on. What gives me hope? Working with students. So I'm here at a university. I train lots of students. We do lots of great research that can have an impact, and is having an impact. So that part is great. I think people are listening more and more. I think that sadly it's taking one crisis after another to get them to listen, but but people are, people are certainly listening in Europe right now with the drought and
So
the
for
water
20
shortages.
years, you were the boy that cried wolf and nobody was listening.
Well, there's been a lot of, there's been a lot of that. I mean, I've been standing on rooftops for a long time. But there's also
You
a
need a
gap-
bigger megaphone is what you
I
need.
do, and so I thought this was it.
Yes,
This is the megaphone. Well, we're in
Yeah.
trouble then. We're in
We
big.
Yeah.
get dozens of viewers here. It's
Well, great.
We get tens of views. It'll be amazing. But going back to your point, yeah, humans have been trying to do this for years. And in the US, they've been aware of this problem. They've been trying to adapt and manage it for years. Going back to the 1920s, the Bureau of Reclamation manages these things throughout the US. And the legislation that established them that established it, that defined a number of acre feet of water that exceeded the actual acre footage of water available throughout the US.
Yep.
So it's a magical thinking even back then.
Yeah, kind of wishful thinking. I think the story, like especially with the Colorado River Basin, is that it has been, the allocations were decided in a sort of historically wet period, and we've never really actually achieved that much water, and it's only getting worse. I don't know. Back to the I don't know if I call it good news, but success stories. So John, you're in Las Vegas, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I think that is a real success story in terms of urban water management. So it's one that keeps coming up. When you look at what's been done over the past 10 or 15 years in that region with water management, they're at a point now where Las Vegas doesn't use its full water allocation from Lake Mead, from the Colorado River. And that's because of some really forward thinking, not just in things like, sure, desert landscaping and drip irrigation, which are super important, but also in handling how the
So you're answering
work.
you're
and how
answering one
hotels work.
you're actually answering one of my questions on my list was, do all those water conservation tactics actually work? And I guess
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah, I think they do. So I lived in LA for a long time, and if kept an eye on what's going on in Las Vegas, and I think our cities have shown us that we can have sustainable cities, right? We can, and Phoenix is another example. These things can be sustainable. There's lots of options. So this is a place where sewage recycling and conservation and appropriate types of irrigation can be really, really helpful. The bigger challenge for humanity is the food production part. So it's trying to figure out how we can grow the same amount of food, right, using less water, or how we can increase food production for, as the population grows, using less water, doing that as efficiently as possible. And that's just, it's taken a lot of work. We do have to work. I now will say we can't move the needle on global water security unless we have deep industry engagement, and in particular with the food industry, because that's where
we have an interesting phenomenon in Chicago, for example, on the roofs. There's roof gardening now, also growing food to consume. What is there a future in urban gardening where people just have little gardens growing on windowsills in apartments and things of that nature? And is that something that can be done with little water?
Yeah. So the answer is the answers are yes and yes. So I think it's important. It's important on like within cities and within parts of cities. And it's a great use of water, and the whole idea of green roofs. I was just up in Vancouver, and
Yes,
a lot of green roofs up there. So yeah, I mean, we have to be thinking about those rooftop spaces and using the space that we have. They're important for so many reasons: for cooling, for growing food, right, for efficient water use. So all of those, also fond of saying, and you've probably heard this before about water and climate stuff. There's no silver bullet. There's not like one thing. Like there's the answer. It's many, many things, and so all the things that we have been talking about are important in one way or another. And that mix of things, it just depends on where you are. I mean, it's going to be different if you're in Egypt or if you're in, Namibia or in Las Vegas.
So
I'm gonna put you on the spot here for a second. Looks like you're in your kitchen.
I know I'm in my office, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. Do you drink tap water? Do you get bottled water? Do you have it delivered? Do you use a Brita or something like that? I'm just curious what you do.
I drink tap water and through a Brita pitcher. Yeah. And
Okay.
so, I'm a big tap water person. I don't drink much bottled water. I mean, sometimes when you're traveling and, you don't know about
Right.
the quality of the water.
Do you think that most municipalities have good drinking water coming from the taps? I'm also hearing we have a huge infrastructure problem in this country with our pipes, our mains, all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious.
Yeah. Overall, I think, yes, I think we have a tremendous, we have very safe and healthy, and for the most part, water infrastructure in the United States and in Canada as well, which are the only two countries where I've lived. Have always drink tap water, really avoid bottled water as much as possible. Always, carry around. I've got a reusable bottle that I filled at home. But that said, the infrastructure is pretty old, and in my neighborhood for the last 2 summers, we have a short construction season up here in Canada.
Yes.
And so they have been tearing up the streets in my neighborhood for the past 2 years to replace the lead pipes. So, and being more proactive about it than, didn't have to become a Flint situation, although the Flint, Michigan situation probably got us to check the lead levels. And so they're being proactively replaced. So that's a problem, right? Replacing that aging infrastructure. Not very sexy politically, but super important.
So
John is very wealthy. He has all his water flowing in from Thunder Bay.
yeah,
Very nice.
I'm interested in learning about the Earth and how the water on the planet works.
Yeah.
Is there not I remember reading a science article, I don't know if it was Scientific American years ago, about some giant aquifer way down in the earth. Is that true? How does the groundwater work?
How come Australia's toilets flush backwards? What's up with that?
Okay, so let's start with I'll skip the toilet one, but has to do with the Coriolis effect. I can just say it. I don't actually remember how it works. But so how groundwater works. So first of all, when we talk about water, most of us think about water that's on the surface, that's in rivers and lakes, and it rains and there's snow melt, and water, feeds streams and runs off into our rivers and maybe fills reservoirs if we build dams. And we call that surface water. And that's what a lot of us are familiar with, and we've relied on it as a global society forever because it's easy to access. But there's also water as you go beneath the surface. When it rains, right, that water trickles down into the soil and can collect in different units, in different rock or soil units that are called aquifers. And they are very much like oil reservoirs. They're just layers of rock or soil where water has collected for different reasons. Because, for example, maybe beneath that rock layer, there's an impermeable layer. And so the water will just collect, in the rock layer above that impermeable layer. And that has happened over geologic time for the most part. So millions of years. And so throughout sort of, geologic time, we've built up these layers, some of which have these rock layers, some of which have water in them. And, because we are a curious race, always on the lookout for, minerals and, exploring our Earth and exploring Earth's crust, either by necessity or just because we've been exploring, we have figured out that there's water underground. And we have to drill for it. We have to dig wells or drill deeper wells to access that water. And that water that's underground in these rock and soil layers that are called aquifers, that's groundwater. And so it turns out that groundwater is actually the biggest source of fresh water in the world. But it is one that is poorly managed. And because it's poorly managed, we are burning through the easily accessible groundwater, like, within a century, we burnt through, 50% or more of it. That's easily.
It's frustrating. I have a neighbor who has a spring in his backyard. So instead of capping this spring and, driving a pipe, 50 or 100 feet down and capping it, he's just let it run into the drainage system. And this has been going on now for 7 years. And it's getting to the point where we, the neighbors, are thinking, all right, we just need to pay for this guy to cap this thing because he's depleting our aquifer. I mean, looking at the land use maps where I'm located, I share an aquifer. I'm on an aquifer that is shared by, 30 or 40 houses around me, right? Which is normal, right? I think.
Yep.
My neighbor has a well drilled 200 feet down. I have a well 600 feet down.
Wow.
You get the same level of water. And I don't understand it. Looking at the maps, it's the same aquifer. Should it not be at the same level?
Wow. So hard to say. Yeah, it's hard to say. Especially without knowing who else is pumping, and without knowing the hydrogeology, but that's a huge difference.
Yeah,
right? You have to go.
It
So it's a 400 foot difference.
Yeah, it was astonishing to me. I mean, I had to replace a submersible pump in my well several years back, like 8 or 9 years back, and then I helped my neighbor deal with hers. And I was just amazed at the price difference of replacing those pumps.
Yeah,
just because of the length of the depth of the wells, which to your point, it doesn't make any sense that it would be that significantly different.
Sometimes the
J.K.
hydrogeology.
McCool says your elevation is different than his clearly.
No,
And
it's
says,
not.
Look at a topographical map, nerd.
The neighbor that I'm talking about is across the street, 50 yards from yards from well to well.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there's a few things that can be happening. I mean, the hydrogeology, the aquifer itself could be really heterogeneous. So it could be that you're just in like a pocket that whatever, it's just a little deeper.
So it's less, when you visualize these things, it's less a lake underground and more.
Yeah, less. Yes.
Of layers.
The lake is really thick where your neighbors live, and then it thins out, and you're like
Yes,
down there,
okay.
like that in that sort of a dip. Could be that, or it could be that if there's other people in your neighborhood that are also pumping, that they're contributing. The water surface, even if the aquifer were uniform, right? Say it's just a uniform layer. If there's other people pumping, or like a big company pumping, they can create that sort of what's called a cone of depression. They can have a well where they're pumping and draw down the water level, right? And so you might be like right next to them, where your neighbor might be over here. So it's called a cone. So they actually create a cone of like the water.
Well, he could have like a huge.
So what you're saying is don't
sinkhole,
ever live
at
next
one
to
point.
a Pepsi or Coke water bottle.
Oh, no, that's exactly right. Because that's, I mean, you are not unique in that. So if that's the situation for you.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that was the next place I was going to go with the.
Well, that's
the
a huge
coming
problem.
in and sucking.
Could Colin and his house just get completely pulled under by a giant sinkhole? Is that?
Well, I would make a great horror movie, so I think we should keep our eye on that. But probably not. He would probably know by now if he were in like a lime. You'd have to have like a limestone aquifer.
It's fascinating. I mean, when I was looking to buy my house, and I've been here now 17 years, So 17, 18 years ago, I was looking at the number of houses in this area with cracked foundations due to,
Yeah.
surface sinking and so on. I'd never seen that in the Northeast. I'm in the Southeast of North Carolina, and I had never seen that growing up in New England. That was not a
So that's part of it. Part of the sinking comes from the geology of the aquifer, and whether or not there's been a lot of water removed. And if there's a lot of clay minerals are flat, and when they get dewatered, when the water gets pumped out, they actually like stack up and they take up less space. And so that's where the subsidence come from. So a little bit like letting air out of a tire and having like the tire walls collapse. In New England, we don't really have that. They don't have the same amount of clays, and it's a completely different.
Jay, how do they map out the aquifers? Are they using ultrasound? Are they drilling, or how do they do it?
It's more of the drilling. Yeah. So I wish that we were doing better mapping of our aquifers. Let's put it this way. So here's a unfortunate fact that we really don't measure the water, quantify the water in our aquifers around the world very well. So even in the Central Valley in California, we can't really tell you how much water is there. And that's because we don't value water. So therefore we haven't done, to your point, John, the drilling that you would need to do. That's really the only way you can to figure out how much water is there. You drill, just like you're exploring for oil, you drill the aquifers, you figure out how much water is there in detail, what the composition of the aquifers are. You map it out, you understand the quality, you can better understand how it's changing. We haven't really done that to the degree that we need to do it, not only in the United States, but around the world.
Have you heard about the project at the Water District here did in Vegas, where they were going to go up, acquire access to the aquifers up in central Nevada and then pipe that down to southern Nevada?
Yeah.
You did hear about that project.
Yeah.
$1 billion.
Is this the one that was in Baker?
Not sure.
So I mean, about 10 years ago it was Baker, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's just another town.
Is that feasible still these days?
It's it's always feasible. It's not the best thing to do. Often it happens without the community knowing. Some, developer, I wouldn't necessarily call them smart, but maybe only doesn't have the community's best interest in mind, but maybe has their financial interest in mind, buys up the water rights, and next thing you know, they can drill a bunch of wells and start pumping water and build a pipeline if they want to, have the money, and send it down to wherever.
So where's a good place in the U.S. to live that has a lot of water for the rest of my life?
So
the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. So, just in a general way, the northern half of the country is wetter than the southern half. And that's changing a little bit. I mean, it's maybe more to the eastern 2/3 of the northern half. That the Pacific Northwest is getting a little bit drier over the last decade or so. But northern half in general is wetter. But the thing we have to keep in mind now is the extremes. So there's really like no Goldilocks scenario anymore, because and when I say the extremes, I mean the frequency of the flooding, the frequency of the droughts. So it's just it's a giant bear wherever we look. There's no like, we just got to just confront it right head on, and we haven't really committed to confronting it all over the U.S.
Aside from conservation usage and not population planning, but location planning, what are the big general strategies that you'd hope would be applied?
Eliminate about 80% of the population of the world.
You could use the Thanos approach.
That's what Thanos said.
Yeah.
Won't go there, but population growth is a
Wait, that wouldn't work, Jay? I think it would. It's a simple solution.
Solve
and it would help with housing too.
It would help with the food production. It would help in a lot of different ways.
You're working on a denominator that we can't work on. Okay, so what are some of the general strategies besides?
So first of all, I think monitoring and measuring what you have. right? Understand as a region how much water is available to you and how it's changing over time, meaning like with climate change, right? Or if there's any new technologies, is your city going to invest in sewage recycling or, update its leaky infrastructure? So start with monitoring and measuring, then think about managing surface water and where communities use groundwater, manage the surface water and the groundwater together, because too often we have surface water management, but no groundwater management. And that doesn't help because it's just going from one bank account to another one, right? So you manage one, but the other one you can just suck dry. So it's important to have the surface water and the groundwater managed jointly. The third thing is that our communities need to be planning for climate change. And that is dealing with these extremes, confronting them, looking out, seriously starting to look out 50 years, 100 years, because we have been caught off guard, and things are only going to get worse. So it's time to engage in those longer time planning horizons and having 50-year plan, 100-year plan, because things are changing fast. And don't
Brent,
again, it's
Brent
not a
is
silver bullet.
watching, and he said desalinization plants. Jake talked about that before, so if you're joining us late, you might not want to watch from the beginning. But briefly, they're hella expensive, I guess.
Yeah, very expensive. I think they can be important in urban water supplies, especially if you're close to the ocean. Here's the thing that no one talks about. If every coastal city in the world decided it was going to build a desalination plant, we actually have no global ocean governance in place. So who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of, what bodies do we go to govern what happens with the brine? None of that's been.
Yes, right. Oh yeah, that's
right.
And Jay, is it true that people can actually find water with a stick? Does that really work? And are there careers in that? Because I've seen a lot of people online. There are astrologers, investment counselors. I'd like to divine.
I can. Water. Yes, I have divine powers.
Divine powers. Jay, does your organization? What is the mission of your organization?
So I'm at the Global Institute for Water Security, and so we want to engage in research that can lead to solutions that can help us adapt to to this changing planet that we're on, and that we engage deeply in the transdisciplinary sense, meaning not just interdisciplinary on campus that we already do, but engage with our city, engage with our government, engage with the private sector to co-develop solutions.
And
are you shepherding funds, or are you doing the research locally?
Both. So we are always, universities have to rely on grants. That's what the
organization is university affiliated.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yes, we are university.
Are you offering a donation there, Colin?
University of Saskatchewan.
I'm just gathering information.
Make your check to payable to the trustees of the University of Saskatchewan, and it just intended for the Global Institute for Water.
This is why I don't drink water anymore. We drink beer.
Hey, Jay,
conservation effort.
You had the years and years and years ago, the aliens came down and helped the Egyptians build the pyramids and do all these we are in dire need now. What is it going to take to get the aliens to come back and help us out?
Well, wasn't there a governor out in the Midwest who was saying that that all the citizens in his state should gather together and pray? I think it was Utah.
That was Utah. That was just Utah. That was just on that John Oliver.
It was great. Citizens of every denomination gather together and pray for water. So, JS, you want to pray for alien intervention? Is that your
I think that might, at this point, be our best bet, since you guys don't want to help me eliminate 80% of the world's population.
Well, I'm not saying I don't think it's a good idea. I'm just not going to help you do it.
Oh,
I
okay.
draw the line. That's where I draw the line.
So Jay, you're
I-
working, what US entities are you working with?
So still work with colleagues at NASA, still work with plenty of university colleagues. Still work with the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. So I'm always going to be engaged with my colleagues there.
What did you do for NASA?
I was the senior water scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is in Pasadena. And while I was there, I spent a lot of time actually doing research on the drought and communicating and doing public education about the drought, but more generally worked to kind of marshal the resources of the lab and bring focus to their water portfolio. So really think about like strategically placing, we call it the lab, strategically place the lab so that it can do the most critical research related to drought and in water availability. And so what satellites do we need? What kind of people do we need to hire? What kind of investments do we need to do, make in research?
Did you have anything to do with NASA had a plan where they were trying to get these asteroids that were essentially frozen water and get them to come here or somehow get that water here?
I just chuckled at that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was a cool, it was a cool place to work because there was a lot of, not that kind of stuff, but they worked on the Mars rover there.
I was
So
gonna say,
Yeah.
like a
Well,
cool gig.
can we get water from Mars here? Is that
we could go live on Mars if worse comes to worse.
I'm trying to
and
figure
then
out
we'd
why-
have to eat, we'd have
Already
to
there,
poop.
isn't it?
trying
What
to
was
figure
it?
out-
Poop tomatoes or poop potatoes? That's right.
Potatoes, yeah.
Potatoes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure
So,
out why you would leave a fun job like that and head up to the Great White North.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Is that a
There's more
sign?
frozen water
Is that a
there.
sign? Is that a sign?
It's a good question. It was hot as blazes, I'll tell you that much. I went from one extreme to the other. No, great opportunity, all kidding aside, great opportunity up here. So I was recruited up here and have a great, research chair. It's a Canada 150 chair in hydrology and remote sensing. So that's great. And being director of the Institute, it's a top program. Our University of Saskatchewan and the Institute here house the #1 program in water resources in Canada and number 15 in the world. So part of it was, when I was at NASA, a lot of it was focused on the drought. And there's a little bit of burnout actually, because the drought was so bad when I was there that there was just, always felt like I was on the hot seat, but also missed being an academics too. So missed, having students and doing research.
During your time at NASA, did you feel the various political pressures of, okay, well, NASA needs to not focus on earth science anymore and this and back and forth, because every administration seems to just shift NASA's focus from A to B with that.
Yeah, there was definitely some of that. There was a little bit of because when I was there, it was also the Trump administration took over.
I wasn't going to say that, but
I was there from 2014 to 2018, and so there was concern that the level of funding would get cut. So always the concern, and always a lot of messaging around making sure you I don't know, are not like a flag waving global change, I don't know, zealot or something. So we were, there was encouragement to be careful with our selection of language. There was a little bit of, do you have to say global change? There was a little bit of that, which I always ignored. So a little bit of that, but definitely the fear. I mean, it's politically funded. And so there's any agency like that, any government agency in the United States, there's always going to be that fear of a new administration. And, what do they think about that, especially in science? What do they think about the National Science Foundation? What do they think about NOAA? What do they think about NASA? So yeah, always that concern.
Do you think that there's still kind of a let them eat cake kind of philosophy going on out there with regards to all this water quality and global warming and so forth?
No, I think I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I do think that there's the United States, especially under the Biden administration, It takes it in.
Yeah, when people said they couldn't, they had no bread to eat,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
response was let them eat cake. So
yeah.
governments kind of try to create problems that don't exist instead of dealing with pressing issues. I just wonder if you're seeing that smoke and mirrors going on, or
No, and don't see it here in Canada, and never really saw it in the United States. I mean, I thought,
okay.
no, I think that we do the best job. It's interesting to have both perspectives. First of all, I would say that Canada is much works more closely with academics, works more closely with universities in a way that's very, very positive. So the research to operations gap is much smaller. The timeline is much smaller. Maybe that's because it's a smaller country and needs to, right, has less capacity. But United States is investing a lot. Can they invest more? Sure. Can they be doing more? Absolutely. But my time in California, I thought that at the state level, when I was there, Jerry Brown was the governor and Felicia Marcus was the chair of the State Water Resources Control Board. Everyone was on point. And so a lot of progress was made, especially with groundwater management. In fact, in 2014, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was passed. So, which is very important for groundwater management in California. So, overall, I've been really impressed, but there are those crazy places like Colin, you mentioned Utah and the praying for rain. I mean, there's some issues that need to be dealt with.
Well, the Supreme Court hasn't done us any favors recently either.
Yeah, and after the midterm
They-
elections, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. So,
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
So good points.
how can you possibly? I don't know. It's not a question you could answer. How can you justify cutting the responsibility of the EPA? But
No, I know.
Jay,
Yeah.
what's it going to take to get two hydrogens to come together to an oxygen so we can create our own water? What do we have to do in order to build that?
I wish we could do that. Wouldn't that be
Right.
awesome?
well, it works with deuterium. Well, no, it doesn't quite work with deuterium, right? But that also reduces water. That's not very helpful.
No.
It's
I mean, if we could have
free,
an
but
actual water factory, that would be great. And so that's why, I think we have to take, if there's a take-home message, there is that we do have plenty of water on this planet. It goes back to what, maybe it was you, John, that said something. Is it, or JS, is it just a distribution problem? It is. It's a distribution problem. It's a management problem. Where people live is not.
who could that be, boys
not-
and girls?
That's
Yeah,
not me.
that
I was
that
afraid.
was Trump.
That's
saying change our language.
John has got a master class he's going to be teaching on how to make Hoffman apparatus.
That was Trump willing to say to we have to watch our language, Jess.
Yeah. Anyway, I lost my
Oh.
train of thought there.
What
but-
did I say?
Oh, you're commenting on water distribution being.
Oh,
one of the
yeah,
problems.
sure.
Yeah.
You know what? Like in an ideal world, right? If we could all, if we didn't have, let's just go to utopia, right? And if everybody got along in this world, then we could grow food in the right places and we could go live and, have water, go live in different places. But we don't, we have our territories and we have our political boundaries. And within each one, there's this pressure to be water secure, food secure, and energy secure. And it's almost, it's impossible.
I've actually never heard that term, water secure.
Oh, well.
There should be a pressure to be water secure.
Yeah. And
When I heard
so-
you were into water security, I wondered if you carried a badge.
I don't carry a badge, but
You carry a really big stick. That's the way to
that
do
could
it.
for
be.
finding the water.
Well, I was thinking for
Thinking
beating
about-
30
Got
people
me
over the
thinking
head.
about
but
my
but
Halloween
burning water too.
costume. I'm like water secure. I'm water security. I'm gonna get like a blue uniform and I don't know, carry bottles of water. I actually don't know. No, carry reusable bottles of water.
How did the Fremen capture all that water on Arrakis? That's what I want to know.
You'd
Well,
have to
I for
consume
one
a
do
lot
not-
of spice. Consume a lot of spice, and then you'll know.
Well, we have mushrooms. I don't think we have spice. And I, for one, do not want to be wearing a still suit in 50 years. So,
Yeah, well,
Oh my, yeah.
Jay kind of clouded my day today. Now we're really going to have to do something bold to make sure that we have some water left.
Yeah.
To drink.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Jay, two
Which
questions
beer?
for you as we're getting to the top of the hour, and being respective of your time and having this thing go on forever. What is the first thing? Two questions. What is the first thing that you want to say to people, just about water in general, what you do, like that maybe? And then what's the other thing where you just go, why the hell are we not doing that?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I would like people to do is to really value and respect water, right? Understand that it's a precious resource, and don't take for granted that you're always going to turn your water on and the water is always going to come out. So really respect it and understand.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah. So really
it is.
respect, right? Really respect that it's a limited resource, and water availability is changing rapidly. The why do they do that kind of stuff? It really, to me, it's the why have we not made the measurements? Why are we not keeping track of? And this is not an individual problem per se, but more of a government water, security. Why are we not making the measurements that we need to make? Right? Why do we not know how much moisture is in our soils? Why have we not been able to figure out? Why haven't we done the work that we need to do to understand how much water is in our aquifers? Why in some places, in some cities, do we not even have meters on the water?
Yeah.
Right? This is crazy.
Do you think the future maybe is about AI analytics and IoT being able to support these efforts?
There's a lot. There's a tremendous amount of room for analytics. In so many different ways. Sharing data. Those communities and agencies that do share data. There's a tremendous information in there about human behavior that can help guide water management. There's also a tremendous need for industry to start measuring and accounting for its water use. Again, I'll go back to we're not moving the needle on global water security unless we engage with industry. So industry needs to start accounting for its water use. And so, analytics could play data science can play a huge role there.
And I have one last question. I'm sure Colin and John do, but originally when I thought you were a urologist and not a hydrologist, but now I'm realizing you may actually be able to answer this question. At what point is the tipping point in a pool when one more person pees and the water becomes unsafe?
Yeah, I'm going to say it depends on the size of the pool. And from personal experience, I think that number is 73 people in a big public pool that I used to swim in.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sure our viewer.
Yeah.
Or viewer.
We have
Knowing the demographics of our viewership, I'm sure they're going to say that the real answer is 42.
42. Yeah.
Yes, 42 is the answer to every
Answered
question.
everything, but
I don't have any further questions. Jay answered all my questions. I am.
Yeah, and what a delightful guest you have been.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Next time we make it up to Saskatchewan, we'll have to come and buy you a nice salmon lunch or something.
Or hit me up while you're here in Vegas next time. I'd love to have a
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Sounds great.
Love it.
yeah, I guess the takeaway here is you mentioned that Las Vegas was a shining example of good water use.
No,
Isn't that amazing?
Water management.
Water
Water management. But what is it going to take to get locations that don't face such dire problems to engage in these good practices? That's what we need to see.
I don't know the answer to that. That's really, and that's the challenge I face.
Is there somebody above you that we can talk to then who does?
Well, I
know
think
the
above
answer?
me,
Come on,
there's only God above me. So
Oh, okay.
no, but this is the problem I face, even in my own family, right? They live on the East Coast. And so, I'll talk to my brother and he'll say, what do I care? Like, I look outside, it's raining, and wow, go west because a huge Mississippi River, and this is not a problem.
Come to Lake Mead.
I don't know. I don't know the answer. If I knew it, I would act on it.
It's got to be a movie, or a book, or a movie.
Well, and
there's
I
a
just want to say
depressing
on behalf
thought to
of
end
everybody
on.
out there, it is nice to know that you're on the job, you and all the other water security people and
the urologists.
And the urologists. And all I can say is I hope for all our sakes that when we go to sleep tonight, we wake up in a better world than the one we went to sleep in. That's my only wish I have.
Hey, Jay, thank you so much. Our producer has left, and so we have no closing. So we're just going to end this thing, and I'm going to stop the recording and end the show. And
Will John Preto ever escape from his white hole? Will Colin Hill ever monetize his breathless pulsoscape? The answers to these and even more of the universe's greatest secrets next time on NerdWorld.